couple of 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. We should look about getting going. So, Joe, Mukesh, are you doing your own slides?
No, Joe's helping out.
Joe's going to do yours. Okay. So, Joe, I'll be in the background, Mukesh, firing questions at you. Kind of 20 minutes. Off you go. Thank you very much.
Well, you'll all be pleased that we've not got many slides here. There's less than half a dozen, and but they are some important aspects to how to maximize the value of your IP and your business. And really, it's the business that's very important. IP is a part of that, and I will go into some detail about value of IP and how you protect that and how you can maximize that. But that, as I said, all goes into how to maximize the value of your business and the different aspects to your business, and perhaps which ones you'd really need to concentrate on to get the most out of an eventual exit. Next slide, please. So I'm a partner in Codax, and Codax, we specialize and deal with the helping clients to sell their businesses, make acquisitions, management buyouts, and raising finance, valuing businesses, and strategic advice. And certainly in this presentation, I want to touch on some of those aspects, namely the process of selling your business, how to value your business and what the different components are, and of course, maximizing that value.
And this is everybody's dream, isn't it, Mukesh? You build a company. I'm talking about companies who raise investment or have done it off their own back. Your big ticket item is when you sell, isn't it? So this is an absolute fundamental part of everybody's dream story, isn't it?
Well, you're absolutely right, Sam. And I say to any client, particularly if they're starting out in business or making an acquisition, I say, well, what's your exit strategy? Even before they've started that business or making an acquisition, because you can't carry it on forever. In fact, I've got a 93-year-old client, and he has virtually gone forever. But there does come a time where it needs to either be passed down to management in a management buyout or sold externally. And so, the business will carry on, but you will leave it at some point. Next slide, please. So, what does that disposal process involve? Now, I'll go on to value, but it's important to understand what the process is in exiting, because value is pertinent to all those aspects, and how in each of these phases that I'll briefly touch on, value really does make an impact, not only on what you get, but also timelines as well. Because if your business is more attractive, then these phases can be, a matter of a few months in totality. If your business is not so attractive and doesn't have the value, and potential purchasers see either issues or you don't get the full value that you think it is, then it's going to take a lot longer. And what I mean by a lot longer, either there's no willing buyer for your price expectations, or you've got to build a business up and build that value up. So just touching on those phases and the process, the initial phase, we as an advisor selling your business would have a review and look at putting the business in its best light. And the way we do that is initially we would say, there's these sort of things that you should be improving before you press the button to sell. And they can be things like tidying up, and Ed touched on some in the earlier talk. So you get all your documents right, your accounting policies and management accounts, as well as getting all the management in place. So you cover sort of each of the main posts that are important in your business, be that a finance director or operations director, or indeed having someone at the helm that oversees all of that. If you cover that off, then it demonstrates that the business has been run well, and there's confidence from the buyer that there is a sound business here that will continue even without you going forward. So that second tier management is very, very important. I'll come on to that when we talk about value. But that initial review in phase one is important. So it then allows us to prepare what's called a teaser document and a detailed information memorandum. The detailed IM, as we call it, is very important because it's the document that really lays out all that your company does, and indeed your staffing, and one of the most important bits is, of course, the financials. So that document is very important for a buyer to understand your business and appreciate what the value is. And the wording that your advisor puts in that document is very important because it's trying to put you in the best light. With
And
those,
is there
sorry,
a
go on.
bunch of work? So kind of before you think about going to market, there must be a whole load of homework you should do as a company. I mean, you've touched on some of it, which is getting a management team in place so it will run and grow without you or the key players who are looking to exit. So getting that in place and process so it's not reliant upon personalities. You know, yes, some of the selling might be reliant on personalities, of course it might, but the running of the business needs to be like a slick machine, doesn't it? Because the more personal involvement at each step of a process, the more it's reliant on the team and not as a company that will move forward on its own. So, there's quite a lot of companies can do to help themselves, isn't there, at that front end?
Oh, very much so, Sam, because and I'll come on to that in my last slide, where if you get all the things right, and believe me, I've not spotted a company yet or seen a company yet that has got all of them right. But the more you do and the more you get right, the more valuable your company's going to be. So you're spot on. If you have those all in the most optimum that you can, given your resources, then that will help in not only this process, but maximizing value. So that second
Okay.
phase is really identifying which purchasers are suitable for your company. And what I mean suitable, I mean those that will recognize the value and recognize value in all forms, including that IP. And certainly when it comes to IP, not all potential purchasers understand or recognize it. So to help yourself, what you should be doing is ensuring that, okay, you shout about it a little, whether it's marketing, advertising, for example, your brand, but also any USPs that you have, you're actually they're known, and people appreciate it. So that's a bit of planning before you go into this sort of
Yeah.
process. But the protection of that IP is, of course, very, very important because otherwise it's diluted, or indeed that value is eroded.
Yeah. Somebody, I was chatting to one group and they were saying down at some talk in London, the Rembrandt in the attic, they called it. And the story goes is chap selling his house, it's a bit dilapidated. These three fellas turn up to buy it. The first, and he says, go and have a look round and come back with an offer. You know, it's on for £1 million. So they go and have a look round. And the first guy, all he's interested in is buying it, knocking it down and building a luxury house. He says, I'll give you 800,000 for it. The next guy's had a look round. He thinks his wife is really going to love this. So he says, I really want this. I'm going to give you 1.2 million. and the guy's rubbing his hands who's selling it. The third chap's been up in the attic having a mooch round, and underneath the blanket, he finds a Rembrandt in the attic. So he covers it back up. He will pay any money for that house, knowing he's got a multi-million-pound Rembrandt in the attic. And they say that about selling your business. If you can identify the Rembrandt in the attic, what is going to set you apart from other people like you trying to sell? What's your magic sauce? As you say, the USP. But yeah, I quite like that term, the Rembrandt in the attic. It's you need to find that and make sure that's there in that memorandum of information to really add real
Absolutely.
value. Yeah,
But it works two ways, Sam. Not only is it what's in your business that's attractive, but actually what businesses would be attracted to your business as well. And that's where that buyer research and the
yeah,
identification, evaluation of not only those buyers, but the approaches that and the negotiations pre any offers, you understand whether those buyers are serious and willing to pay a strategic value.
yeah. And as part of your input on this, Mukesh, do you go, discussion with the people who are selling in? We think these sellers, yes, okay. Do you tailor that memorandum of information slightly to suit the particular people you're going after? So, I don't know, there might be electronics company with a little bit of software, there might be a software company with a little bit of hardware, whatever. You pitch it slightly differently about what the company's selling to fit in within their portfolio.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
And that happens initially in the talks pre them seeing any information memorandum, but also through those talks we understand what they're after. So we'll tailor the IM
yeah, yeah,
that we send to them once they've signed a confidentiality agreement.
yeah. Cool.
So then we move on to phase three, which are negotiations and the offers. And that N word, negotiations, is actually through all phases, because even when you make the initial contact, you are effectively negotiating because you're selling your client in its best possible light, and that is a form of negotiation. Um, we then move once we get those offers, of course. Hopefully, your business attracts a lot of offers. Those offers are no two offers are alike. You could have the same value, but the terms can be quite different. And what I mean by that is the structure of the deal and how you get your money can be quite different. So it's good to have a good experienced advisor on board that can manage all of that and make it to the most advantageous for you and your requirements. Once you decide which offer you want to accept, you go into heads of agreement or heads of terms, which then allows exclusivity to the party that you've chosen to sell to effectively. What that means is that any other parties that were interested or could potentially be interested subsequently, you're not permitted to talk to. That's the sort of legal constraint on signing those heads of terms. Otherwise, the other terms are agreed terms, but they're not legally binding.
Yeah,
There's confidentiality, exclusivity, and each party perhaps bearing their own costs. They're legally binding, but the rest aren't.
yeah.
But it sets a framework for the deal that when we get into phases 5 and 6, it makes it easy to draft all the legal documentation and conduct the due diligence to then move on to completion.
I think just popping back to phase three, what you're saying there about the shape of the deal. So quite often with a deal, we were chatting about this earlier, Mukesh. It might be £3 million and then a deferment of 500,000. A deferment means you're going to get it, as opposed to £3 million and an earnout. So the earnout might be another £1 million and not 500,000 like a deferment, but you're guaranteed that 500,000 deferment. The earnout, you're not in control, and it's like hopefully I'm going to get that million, isn't it? So structuring that, your role in negotiations is to get the best deal for the client, which
Absolutely.
is a balance between money now and money tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, we would try to get, of course, as much money up front as possible, but then the total value may be lower. Um, and then so you've got to balance it up with, do you accept a higher value with deferred? And deferred, you're sort of going to get that. With an earnout, quite rightly, Sam, there's some risk attached because it's on conditions of performance going forward, and you may not have any control of that future
Yeah.
performance. And so it's a risk. And I say to all my clients, treat that as a bonus.
Mm.
Okay, next slide, please. So, valuation then. Valuation comes in different guises, and I just want to touch on some of them here. But essentially, what I'm covering here is what valuation is theoretical, or what you learn in business school, or indeed what the market considers as value. However, true value is what someone's prepared to pay. And that is really what value is about. But we'll tackle this in the theoretical, because it's a starter for 10. So um, when buyers look at value, they look at financial statements, your past performance, and your future performance, or what they perceive as future performance to them. When we produce formal valuation reports for a whole host of reasons, whether it's litigation or for valuing for the shareholders, just so they know, or whether there's disputes between shareholders, we have to have financial statements, because that is the basis of what the company is financially performing, which sets out, both from a profit loss account and from a balance sheet, what meaningful figures there are to get to the outputs of the value of the company. So the inputs, as I've labeled here, are EBITDA, which is basically your profits, but in a cash format. So it's your earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Depreciation and amortization are more or less the same thing. Depreciation is are applied on your tangible assets, like your plant and machinery, or vehicles, whereas amortization is on your intangibles, like and your brand, for example, if that's capitalized, or if you've got goodwill that's been capitalized. So the latter two, depreciation and amortization, are added back because they're non-cash items. You also look at net assets on the balance sheet. Your net assets basically give you a minimum value of what your company's worth. So if you were loss making, for example, you'd certainly look at net assets to understand what the company's worth. Or if you're starting off, net assets may be misleading unless you're capitalizing a lot of your intangibles, but it doesn't capture that future performance of the company. Um, and of course, cash flows, which can do. And certainly, if you go down the route of a NPV in the red box, net present value, then you would project your future cash flows and then derive a value. And that value can get rather complicated, but you need a lot of assumptions. You need to consider um, how reliable and robust those future projections are, and those cash flows. Um, and if you feel they are, and things can change, very quickly, the other stumbling block is, what interest rate do you apply? And that's always difficult to ascertain. So there's a number of complications with going down valuing your company
Yeah.
on a cash flow basis. But ordinarily, most traditional businesses that are have some history of financial performance, you'd use the EBITDA, the profits, times by a multiple to get to enterprise value. The multiple, if I just concentrate a little on multiple, is really a factor that is dependent on what sector you're in, how fast you're growing, what size of company you are, um, and indeed what your prospects are going forward. But also, we look at what companies have been sold for, and M&A data, to understand actually what multiples have been applied in the market. You do then make adjustments as well. For example, one-off costs, and debt. Most companies are sold on what's called a debt-free, cash-free basis. So before you make that latter adjustment of any debt or cash, you reach what's called enterprise value. That enterprise value gives you a value of the whole company, but it's the shares in the company that you're selling. What's the value of that? And the adjustment to make from enterprise value to equity value is, you add on any surplus cash and take off any debt in the company. And the surplus cash is really that cash which is over and above what the company needs from a working capital point of view to carry out its day-to-day duties. Um, so that's essentially what valuation uh,
Easy.
is about.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
So I mean that multiple, I suppose, as you say, it depends by sector, size of the company, all the rest of it. I've seen numbers as low as 2 and 3. I've seen numbers as high as 12. It really is getting into the ribs of your company in your industry, isn't it? And
And what stage you are in
yeah,
your life cycle.
yeah,
Certainly, some technological early stage companies can have double-digit multiples, um, and it's all to do with the buyer as well. How the
yeah,
buyer sees that potential.
yeah,
So if you're as old as I am, we were doing lots of deals back in the late 90s when uh, the world went crazy over companies that really hadn't even started, really, that were in the technological field, that were, big double digits.
yeah, yeah.
And then it, of
Well,
course, all bust because they didn't really
no,
materialize.
yeah, yeah. 2 or 3 minutes then, Mukesh, please, on
Sure. So
maximising your value.
yeah, so all of these spokes around the center are really what you should be looking at getting your company fit for maximizing value. And I'll just concentrate on a few. I mean, you can see them all, but strong management is absolutely essential. They're at the top. Um, that management, if you as the seller are going to depart, then that your second tier management has to be strong, because the company must be able to stand on its own 2 feet without you. So that's very, very important. Healthy cash flows as well, of course, give the buyer some confidence in the strength and reliability and the future prospects of the company, as does, of course, strong industry sectors. Not all buyers will come from the same industry or sector, and so if it's recognized that you're in a sector with high growth potential, good prospects, little volatility, then there's increasing confidence, and so you're going to get a higher value. Good reputation, USPs, we've touched on this again, goes without saying, gives confidence, demonstrates potential for growth, and that multiple, more importantly, will be higher.
Yeah,
A wide customer and supplier base, again, that's trying to minimize the risk or exposure. And, as the old saying goes, you don't want your eggs all in one basket. Modern IT systems, that is very helpful because then it gives them a surety that capital expenditure may not be necessary, or high capital expenditure. It shows that the business can continue and leads the way for growth as well. And then, of course, your protection of IP. That, of course, gives value, confidence, and it goes back to what I said earlier,
Yeah,
really. You need to identify it, you need to recognize it and protect it. And that comes in all forms. But one thing that you must ensure is that you do own it, because there can be people who you use, external parties, that can modify it or help enhance it. For example, a brand or other IP. Make sure that they don't claim ownership of it
yeah,
in any way, that
yeah,
you are the owner of all those changes
yeah.
as well.
Got a quick question just coming on the
Mm,
chat. Oh, this is. I don't know how you're going to answer this. If you're looking at enterprise value, how do you value the IP in the company? As if we assume that's like a patent, that's invaluable to the sale of the product. It's an integral
mm,
part. The paint is an integral part of the product. It would be one thing, but IP is many things, isn't it? It's how robust are your management systems, could be classed as IP. Getting
yeah.
a new product to market, that's IP. Your brand, it's. Any thoughts on valuing IP?
It, it it's it is difficult. No bones about it. It In my mind, you should be thinking about, well, what is that IP going to translate into future value?
Yeah,
Um, and that's your starting point, really. Now, who do you use to help you get that number? Well, you can start with your in-house financial expert, in terms of knowing what sales that could achieve, profits, more importantly. Um, but actually, what if you didn't have that IP?
mm,
Think of it that way as well. What are you able to achieve with that IP and without? And then it comes down to really your assessment of what value that could be to in someone else's hands.
yeah. And a lot of that, I suppose, the more you've got evidence to support that, the stronger your justification for the price is. But if you just go, oh, the IP is valued at 2 million in this company, well, what's your justification? We've worked jolly hard. That's not a justification, is it? It's yeah. That's a really
Where's
Gina
capitalization
Luca.
and
That's a
balance
really
sheet?
great question, but it's a really tough one to, and it's a case by case piece, isn't it? You say
It
balance
is.
sheet intangibles.
Yeah,
That's kind of how you're valuing some of that IP,
yeah.
but that doesn't really work into your net present value because it's being amortized. But what's the value of that in your company? It's really, really, really tricky one.
It is a tricky one. It can figure in your net present value by the enhancement to cash flows and profit.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Mukesh, I'm going to have to stop you there, I'm afraid. That's been amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you for supporting the Innovation Challenge on the welcome drinks in October. Really appreciate that. Lovely having you with us. Um, Selling your business, I've worked with a number of companies who have sold their business. It's high pressure, but it's exciting. And I've had 2 or 3 clients exit, and it's great to just see them out there just taking it a bit easier than they were doing. So, but yeah, getting that expert advice is absolutely crucial. So thank you very much, Mukesh.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move straight on. Mariam, really looking forward to this. I think Mariam, I think you're. Did we agree you're running your own slides, or are we doing it for you?
You're doing it for me, please.
Okay, so Joe, so I've known Datalink as a company for about 15 years, and I've known Mariam probably for about 12 of those years. And just seeing her progress through the company and what she's managed to achieve is amazing. So I'm going to let Mariam talk about her journey. Off we go. About 20 minutes, Mariam, if you will, please.
Yeah, no worries. Hi everyone. I'm Mariam, and I'm the Managing Director of Data Link Electronics. We are a contract electronics design and manufacturing company based in Loughborough in the East Midlands. We operate in loads of different sectors and different markets like the medical industry, oil and gas, environmental, just to name a few. So we've been established for 41 years, and the two founding members were actually in the business right up until point of buyout. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about my background. I've been with the business for 14 years. I started as maternity cover accounts and admin assistant, and then worked my way up through the company, first becoming a finance manager and a qualified management accountant. I then joined the board in 2019 as finance director and obtained an MBA from Loughborough University in 2021. I took over as managing director in January 23 and then completed an MBO of the company in November that same year. So really, the reason I decided to buy Datalink was that the company has been up for sale for a number of years because the owners were in their late 70s and wanted to retire. However, just in the last 2 to 3 years, we had some major interest from other companies trying to buy us out. Some were competitors and some were PE firms trying to expand their portfolios. So I had to sit through meeting after meeting with loads of different people to discuss Datalink and its future. And we even got to the due diligence stage with one buyer, but the deal actually fell through.
Got a quick question, Mariam.
Yes.
To become qualified as the management accountant and then with your MBA, did you fund that yourself or did the company part fund that or?
So yeah, I'll touch up on that in later slides,
okay.
but I actually didn't have to put in any equity myself at all.
No. For the training, when you went from finance manager to management accountant.
Sorry, no, I was lucky enough that the company paid for the whole thing. They paid for my CMA and they paid for my MBA. So yeah.
Yeah, and that sort of we in the second workshop we talk about investing in your people.
Yes.
And we do that at our place. We've got two folk that are on CMA courses at the moment because we see the value of that to the business. So it's a burden on the company financially and time wise, but obviously this has paid magnificent
absolutely,
and magnificently for the company and for you. So yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely. And what we found is when we invest in our people, they usually stay within the business, and we do normally get longevity from them, and they do end up being on the management team as well. So it works well for both and the company. Yeah. Just to continue then, at the beginning of last year then, we were in talks with a company who wanted to buy us out and then move our operations to merge with their factory down south. I really loved working for Datalink. Avios Touch-Up is a great company, and I knew that the only way to secure my future and that of our employees was to try and buy the company myself. But I really didn't know where to start or how much money I would need to put in myself. I was lucky that my husband actually works for a high street bank. So he was able to talk me through the process. And then I actually found out that I could buy the company without having to put any capital in myself. So using a combination of debt, deferred consideration, and the company's cash reserves to complete the deal. Next slide, please. So really, I've been invited here to talk you through my MBO journey and the stages I went through to buy the company. There were many steps that I had to consider before and during the buyout, but I'll just skip this slide and I'll go through them in more detail separately. So next slide, please. Right. So first of all, I really needed to determine whether a buyout was actually feasible for me. I had access to the company's management and financial accounts, profit and loss information, sales book, etc. And I already knew a lot about the financial health of the company and its future prospects. But the initial idea was quite daunting, and I wasn't really sure I'd be able to secure the funding to buy the business, or if I was to put the business in a lot of debt because of the loans. And especially because there were two other offers under consideration. These offers, however, did give me a starting point in terms of the level of my offer would have to be to secure the deal, so it was helpful. I then spoke to the chairman at the time, who was my mentor, who said he would be delighted to sell Daintilling to me, and that this was actually his preferred option because he knew I would run and grow the company and do what's best for its employees. Next slide, please. So Mukesh touched up a lot about this, but I did need to conduct a valuation of Datalink. It's usually a multiple of the company's EBITDA, as he's mentioned, depending on the industry that you're in, but this could still vary massively. So I actually approached an accountancy firm to value Datalink. They did an evaluation, and the valuation ranged between 2 and 5 million, which is absolutely huge for the size of the company. It's because, as you've said before, they use information from the market and what similar companies have sold for recently. But I guess because of the niche industry we're in, it wasn't quite as simple. So then we settled at approximately 3 times EBITDA, based on the previous offers that the company had. And because of the niche market we're in, that's why the multiple is a lot lower than other companies. So once I had the valuation, I then ran the financials and the proposed structure by my preferred lender to gauge willingness before I put an offer on the table. And as you've touched up before, to make things more complicated, there are different ways to structure buyout deals. However, the two most typical ways are either cash-free, debt-free transaction, which means a calculation is done at point of completion to determine the value of the assets, liabilities, and cash in the business. This can then be added or deducted from the sale price. Or it could be a non-cash-free, debt-free transaction, which means that the price is paid regardless of the financial state and cash balance of the company at point of completion. The method, again, can still vary depending on the industry that you're in. In my transaction, however, I did offer a non-cash-free, debt-free deal because at the time of making the offer, this was the slightly more favorable price for the seller compared to the other offers that were on the table, and I wanted to make my offer better for them. However, actually, towards the end of the transaction, the company was doing so well financially that it ended up being the better price for me, which was a nice bonus.
But I suppose, what's interesting there, Marion, is because you were looking to buy, you felt super happy to put in every ounce of energy to grow the business. You were totally behind doing what you were doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is
And I
really,
knew,
really.
absolutely, I knew I had a brilliant management team behind me as well to help me with the transaction and post-transaction as well. And I believe that non-cash-free, debt-free transactions are a lot simpler and usually less contentious because you don't need to worry about defining what and where each assets and liabilities sit. So it was just, I felt like it was easier in my transaction. Next slide, please. So once I determined a price that I was willing to pay, I then needed to make sure that I could actually finance the buyout of the company. So this can involve a combination of personal funds, loans, private equity, deferred consideration, or other sources. And it's actually quite normal to seek finances from multiple different ways. So from Datalink's deal, and to complete the transaction, 25% of the price was paid using the company's own cash reserves. 60% was through a bank loan over a 5-year term, and 15% by deferred payment to the previous owners over a 4-year term. Banks will usually insist on some level of deferred payment. Well, actually, they usually prefer earnouts, but we managed to agree to defer payment instead of earnouts. So I just had to agree with them the amount and the terms and just find something that the previous owners were comfortable with. So the deferred consideration can either be, as I said, an earnout, which is dependent on hitting certain key metrics. So, for example, gross profit criteria over the years, especially if the owners are staying in the business for a period after the buyout. Or it could just be a lump sum, not dependent on any factors, especially if the owners are exiting the business straight away, like in Datalink's case.
So what I've seen as well in deals, Mariam, is where 60% through the bank loan, but maybe 40% on deferred consideration, which is quite
Yes.
high.
Yes.
And what the bank says is that what we'll look at is each year we'll see how much you've paid off, and so you've been really good. You paid off all your loan stuff, interest
Yeah,
and capital. This is what you've got left. We want this level of future coverage. This spare cash you can now use to pay off a lump of
yeah,
deferment. And if you haven't got that lump of cash, the deferment gets rolled over.
yes,
But after 4 years out your 5 year loan, you've paid off, I don't know, 5 million, you've still got two to go. We'll let you borrow another 2 million. We'll extend the loan by 2 years to just get rid of that deferred consideration. So there's different ways of covering that bank loany bit and the deferred consideration,
absolutely
isn't there?
there is. So the bank usually wants more of a deferred payment, but the previous owners were adamant that they really didn't want any. So I was in a very difficult position trying to negotiate kind of between the two. And what we ended up agreeing with the bank, actually, because they've been my funder for years and because they know me and they know that the previous owners had no active role in the business, they were happy to reduce the deferred payment to
Yeah,
15%. And because I was using some of the company's cash, that also helped the transaction.
yeah,
I do plan, though, that hopefully the company continues to do as well, is to try and pay the rest of the deferred payment by end of this financial year,
yeah,
hopefully.
yeah. Brilliant.
And also, I didn't have to put any money in at all, but I did have to sign a personal guarantee for about 10% of the loan value. I did, however, insure that personal guarantee just to mitigate my risk a bit more. Next slide, please. So, when you come to financing the buyout, it is so important to have clear and thorough knowledge of the current finances of the company and also its future projections. So I had to produce a thorough P&L, cash flow, and balance sheet forecast for 3 years to show the profit and loss and also the cash position in the business after paying the MBO fees, loan, and interest payment. You have to make sure that the company will be generating excess cash after all of its operational costs and MBO costs are paid off. I also needed to provide as much detail and reasons behind my figures and how I came up with them. So, for example, why I forecasted the increase in sales year on year, what percentage increase I used on my costs, and why. These forecasts will be absolutely scrutinized by the bank's accountants during the financial due diligence process. And if there are any errors or gaps, it could lead to the accountants making their own assumptions, incorrectly, might I add, which could either delay the bank's decision or it could lead to a rejection.
Yeah. And did
Next.
they actually make that a two-way piece of communication? So, we've got this. Can you just explain A, B, and C? And did they do it verbally, or was it all written and
No, actually, they were really good. And they did pick up the phone to me a couple of times and ask me specific questions. I mean, I've never done this before. So, although I've done cash flows for years, I've never done a cash flow to buy a company. So, I've never
yeah?
had to put in so much reasoning behind every single
Mm,
figure. So, they were pretty good. And the bank did give them the authority to just contact me directly, which just made things a lot easier.
yeah, yeah.
So, next slide, please. Once the offer has been accepted, the due diligence process can then start to make sure that there's no hidden liabilities or issues that can affect the company value post buyout. Really, the level of due diligence will be completely dependent on your position in the company and the knowledge you hold in the company's operations. I didn't need to do any due diligence myself because of my position, I had really good knowledge of the company's finances and running operations, which actually saved me a lot of time and thousands of pounds. Typically, if you're obtaining bank funding, there would be an element of financial and legal due diligence completed by the funder's side. They will have their own solicitors and accountancy firm to do their due diligence completely separate to whatever you decide to do.
And do they pass that cost on to you?
Yes, they do.
And do
Of
they
course.
do they put a cap on that?
They don't put a cap on, but they do discuss it with me beforehand.
Yeah.
So they gave me a couple of quotes.
Oh, the person who's just joined, if you could just pop on to mute, please, on your microphone, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, so they did get quotes from different firms, and they did give me the option.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, the next slide, please. So once the process is underway, I then needed to make sure that all the legal and regulatory requirements are met. So this included incorporating a holding company to buy the shares in Datalink, drafting and signing the share purchase agreement, ensuring compliance with relevant laws, and also obtaining approval from HMRC. This stage can be as complicated or as simple as the parties like. And again, it really does depend on your knowledge of the company and what warranties you'd like in place. Typical types of warranties is what shares are in the company, structure of the company, finances, tax compliance, etc. In a management buyout, though, it's normal for the warranties to be reduced because the management team should already have vast knowledge of the majority of these and are likely will not need them warranted from the current owners.
Yeah.
In Datalink's case, and because the previous owners had no active role in the business and I was already running the company, I knew more about Datalink's operations than they did, so I didn't really need any warranties to be put in place. And really, it wouldn't have been very fair for me to ask for any.
Yeah.
So the only warranties that were in our SPA were the ones required by the lender, which were guarantees of the shares in the company and tax compliance. So really our SPA was relatively simple. However, it still did take 3 months to complete. And we kept going backwards and forwards between our solicitors to discuss and agree even minute points. It's really important for you to choose a good solicitor. Ideally, one that you've dealt with before and that you have a good relationship with, because the transaction speed heavily relies on how good the solicitors are. The ones I used were absolutely brilliant, and I really think without them, it probably would have taken an extra 3 months. Next slide, please. So once the SPA has been agreed and signed, I then needed to finalize the transactions. So this involved transferring the ownership of the shares to myself, finalizing the financial agreement with the bank, and ensuring smooth transition. This stage will usually be done by your solicitors immediately after the buyout, and then any HMRC filings is done by your accountants at a later date.
As you got towards the deal close,
Yeah.
was it quite stressful?
Yes. Oh my God. The deal,
Yeah.
I mean, ours was supposed to be, round table. I was just calling the owners, talking to them
Yeah.
because I've had such strong relationship with them for years. And as I said, one of them was my mentor, but it was so stressful. We kept having to go backwards and forwards between solicitors, accountants, the lender, between things got finalized. And it took about at least a month longer than I was expecting to complete. And you really have to be so careful because these deals are all consuming. And really,
Yeah.
if you're not careful, it could draw your focus away from running the business.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
that's a real key one, is it? And we've talked about this before on this kind of kind of workshop. The deal's not over until it's done. So do not in
yeah,
your head start spending the money you're receiving, because it can fail in the 11th hour.
absolutely.
You need to be running your business and growing it as well as doing the deal.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
And
I won't go into any details, but we did actually come to a bit of a non-agreement between the bank and the sellers. And at one point, we weren't sure if we're going to go ahead or not. So,
yeah,
yeah, it does happen.
and that's on a
Next,
friendly transaction as
and
well.
that's on a
Uh,
friendly transaction. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. Next slide, please. So finally, once the MBO is done, you'll then need to focus on integrating your new ownership
No. The
structure.
first thing you do is you have a glass of champagne, surely.
Yes, actually, that's so true. Then you have to go back to business. Yeah, smoothly into the existing operations of the company. So, because it's so critical to maintain business continuity. But it was a little bit easier for me though, because I was already running the company and they didn't have an active
Yeah.
role. This step was really easy. There wasn't a lot of integration to do. I just had to let our employees, customers, and main suppliers know of the change of ownership. But really, depending on your position in the company, it is key to understand the roles of the outgoing owners and remaining management team and understand key people's long-term plan because this is so vital to maintain continuity post-transaction. For me, it was actually promoting my business development manager to director. So I did this to retain him in the business because he'd built such strong relationships with our key customers. And I also, because I was the only director left, I needed to add someone
Yeah.
that I trust to the board to assist me in the day-to-day running of the business. Next slide, please. So finally, just to touch upon costs, as you've mentioned before, and these are approximate depending on who your contractors are, the size of your company, and how extensive your due diligence and SPA is. My approximate costs were for the company valuation report, it cost me about £5,000. Say it cost me, the company did pay for it, so I didn't have to pay anything myself. Bank fees, including their due diligence, it cost about 35,000. But as I said before, this does get agreed with you in advance.
Yeah.
Solicitors were approximately 30,000 per side, and the accountants were about 15,000 per side. So overall, you're looking in the region of 80 to £100,000 of fees on top of the purchase price. Next slide, please.
But
So
most of those go through the business, don't they? So it's not like
they do.
you're going to have to scratch behind the back of the sofa for it. It's that they're absorbed by the company. So the company needs to have got that war chest to fund both the transaction and the on continue paying off losing cash if the existing
Yes.
directors take money out, and the cash flow of the business, isn't it? There's
absolutely, and because each side deals with their own costs, if, for example, the deal had fallen through, technically I'd be liable for my own legal costs. However, because it was a really friendly transaction, the chairman had already said that if anything happens, the company would be paying for my costs. So I was actually quite lucky, but other people probably wouldn't be in that stage. So it is a lot of money that you'd have to pay if something did happen to the deal. And I don't know, to be completely honest, it's been 6 months since the buyout, and it's not really sunk in yet that I own the company. It's not really felt that much different owning the company to running it. But Christian did touch up earlier on lifestyle businesses, and that's really how Datalink was before. But now that I've bought the company, I've got full autonomy to make investment decisions that will help Datalink grow without having to put like a lengthy proposal to the shareholders. So my plan with my management team is to focus on automation, digitization, investment in machinery, and hopefully growing the company.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, absolutely fantastic. Have you put in place an external chairman or chairperson just for you to have that sounding board, who's maybe not been involved with the company before, but has just got that oversight alongside you to be both a shoulder to cry and somebody to celebrate with, but bounce ideas off? And
I haven't just yet, but that would be something that as we grow the company that I would need in the future. But at the moment, because it's only just happened, I'm kind of trying to fumble my way through owning the business and running it. So no, I haven't just yet, but definitely in the pipeline.
That's Mariam, that's been I love that story. I think that is just
thank you.
I think it's absolutely inspirational, and seeing your passion for the business coming through as you talk through it, because I know you're a little bit nervous, but I thought that was brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you. No questions, but lots of brilliant stuff coming on in the chat. So absolutely fantastic, Mariam. Thank you very much, and
thanks, Sam.
I'll see you before long. So
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. We're going to just learn a bit about PR now. So PR, there's some people say there's no such thing as a bad PR, but I'm sure Liam's got something to say on that. But I've known Liam now for probably for about 8 years, I think it is. Liam, are you there? Hopefully he is.
Hello. Yes, I am. I was just turning off my very noisy fan. I'm sat up here in the attic and it's very warm, so I just thought I'd turn my fan off in case there's a jumbo jet in the background.
Yeah. So I think you're running your own slides, aren't you, Liam?
I am indeed. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll leave you to get on that. So Liam runs a PR company, which so previously the previous company that Liam was working with was predominantly around, I think, automotive, but this is now a bit more of a broader church of industry sectors that you're going to be working with, isn't it? So I'll let you go. Off you go, Liam.
Thank you very much. Well, that is. Can you see my slides? Okay, Sam.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I got that.
Cool. Well, that is a tough act to follow with Mariam.
Oh,
there.
isn't
What
it?
an inspirational
Isn't it
story. I know. So hopefully I can do not too bad on this one. So so the title of this one is we've put PR, but I thought we'd focus a little bit more on how to get your company in the news for free, which I think is probably quite a nice topic here. So a little bit about me. I won't go on too much, but 16 years experience. I started out as a journalist working for the Daily Express before moving into PR and marketing. I've had quite a bit of experience with working with startups and incubators, which haven't got the best reputation on this workshop. But today I focus on helping companies achieve their business growth goals through PR, marketing, and sales as well. Just a little bit about Crowdpool, won't go on about it too much, but we very much focus on the why. So why are we doing this? It's not just PR and marketing for the sake of it, it's business growth through communication. So we're sector agnostic, but we have specialism working with the technology sector, consumer brands, e-mobility, so everything from drones to e-scooters, motorsports and automotive industries as well. We do PR, but we do so much more than that as well. And it's very much that journey of, working through that strategy, PR, marketing, and growth. Some of the brands we're very, very proud to work with. But let's get on to the session. So let's talk through today's objectives. So how can you get your company in the news for the right reasons, I'd like to add, for free? And the answer is PR. So interestingly, the PR industry does a really terrible job of PRing itself. So if you go to a barbecue and you talk to someone and say, what do you do? I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher. You'll probably know what they do. Most people know what a doctor or a teacher does. However, not many people actually can define what a PR professional does. It's one of the things I'm sick of trying to explain. But, a little stat for you there. 60% of the public believes PR needs to redefine the offering there. So let's look at exactly what PR is. So Wikipedia, let's take it straight from there. So public relations is the practice of managing and dissemination information from an individual or organization to the public in order to influence their perception. I kind of get what it does, but not really. So let's look at my definition. So I'm putting public relations as the practice of protecting and promoting a person, brand, or company's reputation to their target audiences via unpaid third parties. And that's the key bit here. It's unpaid. So it can be in newspapers, magazines, or earned social, but it's not advertising. It's not paid.
Because you see quite often, you see kind of advertorials, don't you?
Yeah.
So where you pay to put an article in about something, but it's half a page in the back of a local newspaper, but you've paid for that to talk about a subject. But this is nothing to do with that. This is actually getting content out there into specific magazines, as you pay, papers and whatnot, that you need to be in.
Correct, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with advertorials. We do advertorials as well, but that's more of a marketing approach, I'd argue, than a PR approach.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it, and I would say something we'll come on to later on is, everything has to work into the marketing mix, so to speak. It's not just do one or the other. But essentially, yeah, if any newspaper or magazine that you pick up that has an article written by a journalists won't like me for saying this, but it probably has come from a PR person. It's very little investigative journalism goes on a daily basis. So let's look at some of the benefits of PR. So it requires far much less investment than other marketing activity, which can be hugely valuable when you're starting up as you're starting up your business. Just a quick anecdote from a client of ours who was spending £240,000 a month with Google through PPC. They were a very large, very well-funded technology startup, but we were doing very equivalent activity with them in terms of it was driving equivalent traffic to their website, and they were paying us around £3,500 a month. So it's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So it didn't mean that they could switch off what they were doing with Google. It just meant that they could reduce it by a good £150,000 a month. So it requires a lot less investment, increases your brand recognition, and creates that demand generation. And that's really important, that customer pool we've talked about in other things, but demand generation. People don't necessarily know what they don't want if they don't know about it. So let's create that demand generation.
Is it both brand recognition and brand trust? Because people read it and hence think, oh, they know what they're talking about. It's not like an advert, is it? This is you talking about something, so you become kind of the recognised expert, so the trust builds.
100% bang on, Sam. I mean, if you went down the pub tonight and you started saying how great T-Bat was, people are going to say, I'm sure it is great, but he's going to say that because he's the director of the business. If I go down the pub and say, T-Bat's really great, I have no financial connection with them whatsoever. They go, oh, I'm going to look them up. They probably are. So absolutely. So that credibility and trust is hugely important.
But if you talk to the landlord and he says that, have you heard about Sam's company? That's brilliant. That's
yeah, absolutely. And there's one of the stats there. PR is 90% more effective than advertising in influencing consumers.
Yeah.
But then marketing obviously and advertising has a place to play in brand recognition as well. So helping driving traffic to your website, crucially as well, it can be really valuable for attracting investors and increasing the value of your business. I'll go on to an anecdote later on of how we did that for one of our clients. Boosting your SEO and discoverability. Everyone puts stuff into Google nowadays, or Bing or Yahoo, and it's making sure that your brand comes up as well. So it's hugely important for that. Creating trust and credibility we've touched upon, but also recruiting and attracting talent. So there's some work we've done, which is specifically just on trying to make the brand more attractive, so people would consider it if they're going out looking for various different jobs. So there's huge benefits you can have to that. So let's look at how you can use it to get your brand in the news for free. But just before we go into that, let's just kind of dispel some of the common myths around PR. So PR equals press releases. It doesn't. There's lots of things you can do. It doesn't necessarily need just to start a press, writing a press release. There's various different things you can do. PR is all about contacting schmoozing journalists. I think this is one of the questions I get asked the most, apart from what does PR do, is what's your black book of contacts look like? So throughout this workshop my phone actually went off on a call. It was the editor of the Times, business editor of the Times, someone I know very, very well. But if I WhatsApp him now and saying, can you promote T-Bat company because it's my mate's company, just because I know the editor of the Times business section doesn't mean he's going to cover it. So actually, the black book of contacts these days, I don't think means as much as it used to. What really means something, so if we look at the last stat here, 75% of journalists, the most important thing a PR can do is actually understand the reporter's audience and what they find relevant. So the key bit is actually creating that story. It's much more important than journalist contacts. And to be fair, you can get most people's contacts now through Google. So, it doesn't really matter what is in your phone book. But the final one is PR is only useful for product launches or company news. In fact, I would argue it's probably only 50% useful for that, because finding a good story shouldn't be about your business or your product. It's got to be about what the general public want to hear, or what that specific niche audience might want to hear as well.
And when you're working with a client, Liam, do you therefore get into the ribs of the company, understand sort of the staff, the drivers, their case studies, and you say, let's now plan 6 months of PR. So it's like advertising. You don't just put one advert in the back of a motorbike magazine to sell a bike chain. You need to plan what you're doing to build up the confidence, the trust, the repetition, the reinforcement of the brand. So is that what you do? You work with them to understand where the PR can be drawn out from them, and then plan out where you're going to use it.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It's got to be for that. It's got to be that way for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I have to understand what the business is driving towards, because otherwise it's PR for the sake of PR or marketing for the sake of marketing. It's not necessarily going to have the desired effect that they want. And secondly, you're absolutely right as well. It's not an overnight thing. It's something that does take a sustained messaging. Most projects normally last for 3 months at a minimum, and then you go right through to a 36-month project in some cases as well. So if we just go on to the next slide. So how can you use it? The simple answer is create a compelling story which resonates with the relevant and is relevant, to reporters' readership. So be relevant to your customers' customers, what I've put here. So when it comes to PR, if you're selling into a journalist, you need to get yourself into the mindset that the journalist is actually your customer. You want them to buy your company's story. So the customer's customer is that journalist readership to their newspaper, their magazine, And it's not just necessarily things like the Sun or any of the red tops we're talking about. We're talking about really niche business to business, manufacturing publications, technology publications, whatever it might be. It's all relevant.
All those ones that appear on "Have I Got News for You," isn't it, at the end?
Yeah, that's exactly that. Yeah.
I've been taken from Dog Trainers Weekly, and these.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a good read. Don't knock it. But
Yeah.
So in terms of where to start, ask yourself the why, and I think this goes back to, the thing of purpose that we heard in one of the first presentations in this session. Why are you doing this? What do you want to get out of it from your business? Is it brand awareness? Is it traffic through to the website? Is it sales? If it is sales, I think you have to manage your expectations. It's probably not going to be direct sales immediately. However, brand recognition, brand awareness, driving traffic to the website, be really clear on what your objective is before starting off. Then that will help you identify what the right media that you need to work towards are. So as we've mentioned, if you've got a specific desire to be in one of the broadsheets or one of the red tops, or if it's a niche business to business publication, make sure you find which media are relevant. Do some reading, create a target list of the journalists as well. Read those previous articles, identify what is of interest to those journalists and develop those common themes and think, right, how can my business potentially fit into this? If you're going after the B2B niche publications, little tip for you, they often do a media pack. They're normally on the website somewhere. If not, you'll be able to request them from the sales team. And it is predominantly for advertising. However, what they do is they map out for the full 12 months exactly what topic and theme is going to be in each publication by month. So you can actually time. So if you've got a manufacturing business, and you want to put some editorial into this specific magazine, you can see in June they've got a specific feature on manufacturing, so you know that you can target it in the right time. They've got the deadlines of when they go to print, so you can actually be quite strategic in how you target these magazines as well. Other tools you can use as well, which is more relevant for things like the daily newspapers, online ones, is use online tools to see what's trending. So social media listening tools, even just going on Twitter or X and just seeing what is trending is really, really useful. But things like Google Trends, you can see exactly what keywords are trending on Google in the last week, in the last day, in the last hour. And you can see, for example, so if the cost of living is something really that's being talked about in the media at the moment or in social media, you can try and work out that's an angle that press are probably interested in and try and weave your company into that story narrative. So after you've done all that, do some brainstorming, idea generation, value add and unique data. So this is really important for the journalists as well, to try and get them to pick your story up. There is lots of data that's out there that exists, even if it's not particularly new data, if it's never been used before. There's lots of .gov websites where there's lots of data that you can harvest and you can take and you can weave into your own narrative, but also your business as well. Maybe not if it's a very early startup, but your business will have a lot of data in it. It's about how you translate that data into a compelling story and what makes it of interest to that journalist and their readership as well.
Some people go out and do like questionnaires from their customer database. We're thinking of putting together an article about A, B, C, and D. It'd be great if you can just do this quick 2-minute survey monkey and then use that as the basis for part of their PR, because they've actually got evidence to underpin what they're saying. Okay, it's from a closed 100%. Audience.
Yeah, I mean, we the only word of caution I'll have with that is we do a lot of research to help generate data for news stories, specifically with things like TV and radio. It's very important. They are quite picky, the news desks, where the data comes from. So things like a survey monkey on a closed data list, they're normally a little bit snooty about. So if you want to do something like that, you can commission your own survey. You do have to invest a couple of £1,000 into doing something like that, but you get, normally you get a huge lot of data that will probably give you 6 months worth of PR stories. Or you can go down an omnibus route, and you can get it's a few £100. You can get you can generate data for, and it will go out to 2,000 people, 5,000 people, whatever you want it to be, basically. So yeah, you can do things like that. And then next, visuals and assets. So actually think about how publications work. So they're businesses in their own right, and most of their revenue, if not all of it, will come from advertising. So sorry, the dogs are going mad. Hopefully no one else can hear that. So they all come from advertising. So if you've got really strong imagery or videos that they can embed into their system, it drives more traffic to their website, means they can charge more for advertising. So help them out and understand how they operate as a business, and then create your story. And I would I would avoid the spray and pray tactic, which is where you put together a press release and you just fire it out to 1,000 journalists and hope for the best. It's much better to target a handful of journalists, tailor it for each journalist, make it a regional angle, for example. If you're writing a story about Northamptonshire, don't send it to someone in Essex. Write a specific Essex angle for that story. Put a national angle on it, put a lifestyle angle on it, or a business-to-business angle, tailoring it for each publication, and the journalists will really appreciate that. Journalists are very time poor. If they can lift and shift your copy, basically, and copy and paste it and publish it out, that's one thing off their to-do list, and they'll be really appreciative of that. And then sell it in. So let's have a little look. Let's have a little look about writing a press release before we go into selling it in. So, as we mentioned before, it's not essential to write a press release. There's always that temptation of, right, I've got to write a press release. You can do it by just picking up the phone and pitching it in, or doing a short email. But it's probably one of the most effective ways that you can gain coverage. But remember to follow just go with the following. Otherwise, your press release will probably be ignored, and you'll be left wondering why. So, firstly, it's got to be timely and newsworthy. So using those elements like Google Trends and seeing what is being spoken about in the media at the moment is hugely important. Must be concise and to the point. Avoid long, rambling marketing content. This must be news. It's not an advert. Understand the journalist's job and their audience as well. So by doing all of that research that you have done before, by looking at what Joe Blogg's journalist has written about for the last month, you'll get, you'll very quickly get a flavour for the sort of stories that their readership are interested in. So make sure that your story is tailored to that. Ask yourself, be brutal, right? Ask yourself, will anyone care? It's very difficult, especially when it's your own business, because you're so passionate about it, as you have to be be able to drive it forward. But actually, will anyone care? Make this about the reader, not your business. Make sure, for example, that your company name is not plastered all over the press release. Some of the best successes I've had is where the company name is maybe mentioned once in the quote, maybe twice, 3 at absolute maximum. I counted one the other day. There was 22 mentions of the company name in the press release. That the brutal truth is, a journalist doesn't care. A journalist thinks, what can I do as quickly as possible to get this story live that is going to have it's going to go down with my readers. And last point there is pretty much what we said. They're not features. Avoid mentioning the company name over and over again.
Yeah. About 5 minutes, Liam.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. I shall rattle through. Press releases are fairly formulaic as well. So catchy headline. Think of it like CVs. When I was on the news desk of the Daily Express, we had about 110 press releases would come through my inbox in the morning, and I'd only be able to publish 3 of them. So it's a bit like CVs. Mostly, you never get past the headline, you never get past the first bullet point. So make sure it's really concise and you've got all of the information in there. Selling it in, the picture of a phone there is a bit of a red herring, because journalists nowadays actually don't have time to speak to you on the phone. So make sure you pitch it in with an email. Keep the email incredibly short. Dear Sam, please find below the latest press release on Crowdpool. Best wishes, Liam. Don't start regurgitating the press release, because there's no point in that. You can find most journalist names and the contact details online, but in the absence of relationships or finding their email addresses, consider investing in a newswire service. So that is a specific online company that will have databases of all the key journalists in the news desk. It will send them to all various different markets. They're not massively expensive, and it really helps to get your press release distributed there. Something just to be aware of, if you don't expect an instant response. Quite often, journalists will publish a story without even mentioning it to you. So make sure you check, you go back and check that your story is live. And if pitching into a broadcast news desk, that's TV and radio, make sure you just have a simple contact sheet with, who's available for comment, clear contact details, and all those sorts of things. Timelines, media landscape has changed massively. Story used to have a 24-hour shelf life. It's now more like 2 weeks in terms of a period, because there's been lots of cuts and stuff on news desks as well. So it's just whenever they get around to doing the stories. But make sure it's timely, as we mentioned. If you're doing a story about Valentine's Day, don't send it on the afternoon, 14th of Feb. Plan ahead. Now, this is, I know we're running out of time, Sam, but this is quite an important bit just to look at here. So, building backlinks. So, what is it? How is it? How and why is it important? So a backlink is basically when you're, it's another website. It's another website linking through to your company website. So how can you do it? Most of the time, if you've been successful in getting some coverage and getting your press releases picked up, most of you just request them from the news desk. They will ask you for it. Please do not buy them, because that's, there's lots of companies out there which says you can buy for £1,000, you buy a link on Forbes or the Times or whatever it is. They're not genuine links. They seriously harm your SEO of your website. So if you get coverage, just ask them, and they'll normally give them to you. And why is it important? So backlinks from high domain authority pages such as national, regional, B2B news publications. So that really helps to boost your company's own SEO and that discoverability. So in the long term, that really helps with making sure that your company ranks first on things like Google. That can also add value when talking to your investors as well. 89% of business-to-business buyers turn to Google before making a purchase.
Yeah.
So let's just look at a couple of working examples before we finish off here in terms of what we've done with other clients and how it's really worked for their business. So I worked with a technology startup app. It was business to consumer focused. They had a very specific brief, which is to raise that brand awareness and build backlinks from high domain authority websites, basically driving traffic through to their website. This was the company that spent £250,000 a month, more or less, with Google. What we did was we went through the various different research part that we do, and we found that the cost of living was over the last 12 months, has been a really prominent topic in a lot of the newspapers. So we came up with a theme around homeowners making extra money. And this app would help you make extra money from things like driveway. So we then came up with a series of stories over a 12-month period. We approached and sold them into sort of national and regional online newspapers as well, offering exclusive case studies. There was over 500 articles that were achieved in a 12-month period. More than 75% of them were from sites with high domain authority, score of 65 and above. And that, and then it was all building up to part of their the founders' exit. They exited the business for £144 million, and that there was a wider marketing strategy as well, which that aimed towards, but that actually helped them getting that end valuation from their business. Looking at it from a business to business point of view, so as a technology startup software company I was working with as well, they were going for their Series A funding round. They had a very clear brief as well, which they just wanted to say, as seen in Forbes or on the Times. So what did we do? We commissioned some research very clearly, very similar to what we've just had the discussion about, providing the company with new and exclusive data. We then worked over a 3-month period to develop some bespoke exclusive stories for those 2 publications. We put the CEO at the heart of the story, so he was quoted. So it was on a much wider macro issue. He was the guy quoted. Results to the articles that they needed in Forbes and Times, he was able to say it during his Series A funding. The funding was achieved. So, so in summary, PR is a great tool for startups or for any business, to be fair. Brand awareness, it helps to effectively promote your business. The SEO support, it's got investor appeal, helps drive that traffic through to your website, and it's also very cost effective. Some considerations, though, it's got to be a complementary strategy. It's just, you can't just do PR on its own. It's got to fit into those other things that we did. And the last 2, here's the plug, Sam. It's, it can be time consuming. There's a reason why marketing agencies exist for a reason. you know, your job, and this is a theme we've spoken about a few times, your job as the founder of the business is not necessarily to do all of the doing. You can do some of this stuff in the early days, but, you know, get the professional help as and where you need to get it, whether it's from brand awareness right through to, you know, setting new business appointment meetings. And a final word of caution. So if you do get the coverage that you wanted in your dream publications, you'll be really proud of it. Congratulations. But be careful about sharing that with the world. You've got to have the correct licenses in place. And there are a few companies that will fall foul of sharing it on things like LinkedIn due to copyright infringement. And you'll have the licensing authority after you asking for a rather large amount of money. So just keep that in mind and make sure you do a bit of due diligence before sharing.
Although you've written the article and submitted it, because they've published it, they own the published rights to it.
It's then owned by BBC or ITV or whoever it is who's published it. Yeah, correct.
But you can ask permission.
You can ask permission. Yeah, you can ask permission or just buy the license.
Yeah. Wow.
And that includes even sharing a link. So it's there's some contact details there, but yeah, even sharing a link you're not technically allowed to do.
Wow, did not know that, because you'd have thought if you'd written it, you'd own it. And
does not the case.
No, does the PR piece also extend into getting somebody in front of a radio station? So, you know, this is an interesting story. Why don't you have him on your radio show on Sunday morning on the business slot, sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Or on TV, or, you know, things like the One Show, 6 o'clock news, those sorts of things. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. So, yeah, well, I don't know what to say. That's been amazing. An absolute romp through. You'll have to turn your fan back on in a minute.
I know, it's getting warm up here now, but
yeah, amazing. We haven't got any questions, so you know, guys, audience, please take time to look. We're going to be publishing all the workshop online, so you can go back and look at the content of the slides, listen to what the speakers have got to say. But absolutely fascinating, and it always is. And with the new venture, broader market appeal, I think you're going to do fantastically well, Liam. And thank you so much, even in these early stages, coming along and helping us out on the workshop. Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Okay, folks, we've got just a 10-minute chat now with Alistair Wilson from Septest. So last year when we ran the Innovation Challenge, we had over 65 entries. We narrowed it down to 10. And I think, Alistair, you were actually at a different event, and it was your wife who joined us for the evening.
That's right, yeah.
And then, amazingly, you won the audience award, I believe. And then also the main, you were the winner overall. So yeah, amazing. Well done you. So, so I don't think we've got any slides for this, so I'm just going to ask you questions.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So do you want to just talk? This has been an amazing journey, everybody, that Alistair's on. So I think first of all, if you can just give us a sort of a 5-minute background to where all this came from and what Septest is, and sort of your journey up until kind of October last year.
Yeah, well, it actually starts probably about 20 years ago, which might seem like obviously a long time. But I'm actually a sepsis survivor myself, so that's where the 20 years comes in. So I just left university, I fell ill, ended up having what was quite routine sort of abdominal surgery. And then, after the surgery, I developed an infection, went downhill very rapidly. I'll save you all the gory details, but essentially had sepsis. And for those of you who don't know what sepsis is, it's basically where your immune system gets triggered, usually because of an infective agent. So that can be a bacterial infection, a viral infection, or a fungal infection. And sometimes it can progress into what's known as septic shock. And that's a bit of a confusing term, because sepsis, strictly speaking, is caused by an infection. And you have organ dysfunction, and they can both lead into something called septic shock, and that's the bit that you die of. So if you imagine it like a funnel with septic shock at the bottom, and then at the very bottom is death, unfortunately. The longer you take in that sort of funnel, if you like, before you're diagnosed with it and you get the right treatment, the harder it is to pull you out of it. So that's where you might see, the recent case with the MP Craig McKinley, who's got no arms and no legs. He's got, the grabbers and everything on there. that's kind of, what happened with him. He wasn't able to have been pulled out of that funnel quickly enough.
Yeah.
So, and this is the thing with sepsis is, and it's really frustrating, especially if you've been affected by it or you've lost a loved one to the disease, the condition, is that we have all the treatments. And imagine, losing someone to a condition where you've got the drugs and they work, but the reason they died or they're disabled or whatever it is because they weren't diagnosed and given that treatment in time. And so that's where SEPTEST comes in, and that's what we're all about, is providing that what we call a point of need test. So it's basically in front of the patient, right here, right now, what is going on, and that 10-minute test for less than £10. It's a lateral flow device, basically like a COVID test. You get a line if there's something going on, and we can tell you roughly what is going on. Not specifically what's caused it, as in like the name of the bacteria or whatever it is, but we can tell you there's something going on.
So I mean, having the idea of a lateral flow test for sepsis. So what's your personal background, sort of scientifically wise, whatever, that allowed you to realise that this could be achievable?
Yeah, I mean, so prior to me, actually, I'd literally just left university, so I've got a master's in chemistry, and then I got ill, and so I left in July, graduated in July, and I was in hospital September for about 4 weeks or so. And then I went off on my merry way, eventually managed to get a job in pharmaceuticals and clinical trials and all that sort of stuff. And then I accidentally fell into medtech and into a role looking at diagnostic innovation, largely in sort of diabetic testing technology. And then, once you start mixing in those circles and you measuring stuff in bodily fluids, then, you kind of, people come up to you with different challenges. And sepsis was always one that was, that we came across a lot. And it's just so challenging because it's not caused by one thing, and your body doesn't react the same way because it's not caused by one thing. And at the time, there wasn't a lot known about the immune system and how it functions and how complicated it is. So biomarkers and how you do all this sort of stuff, and the technology really wasn't there. Certainly not for lateral flow technology. We would, obviously everyone was trying to be quite smart about it, but the focus was always on bacterial sepsis, and that is 60 to 70% of what we class as sepsis is caused by bacterial infection. But there's a large part, and certainly with COVID and other things, now that we're getting more data and we understand more about sepsis, viral and fungal infections and other things that are a big driver of it as well. So that's where we're able to actually now, as you say, with COVID and everything and lateral flow technology progressing so rapidly, certainly over the last 4 years, we're able to actually have a test that is capable of being used at the point of need and for this purpose.
So were you able to sort of I might be usefully wrong here because I'm an engineer, not a chemist. So with a lateral flow test, you use some bodily fluid, of probably spit in this or blood, and then you have an assay, and you add the two together, and then it will report back on the likelihood of an infection or of a fungal, bacterial, viral load. Is that?
Yeah.
So did you develop that assay then?
Yeah, that's it. So it's the biomarker combination, but also there's some new technology in lateral flow tests that allow you to actually, so traditional lateral flow tests, you kind of get a line, it's either off or on. And then recently they started doing more kind of like, well, it's, if the line gets darker, that kind of gives you an indication of the concentration. But actually now we can do almost like a ladder scale. So we can almost give you we wouldn't say it's a digital thing, but it can give you a high, medium, low kind of readout on severity. So clinicians can use that as a very much a prognostic kind of how urgent is this, and and can it be treated either in the community, or is it serious enough to bring them into hospital? And then what's the urgency of that treatment? And do we need to give antibiotics? So AMR is a big driver here as well. Massive waste of cost, and obviously a big risk that's called out in WHO as well as sepsis.
And sort of to get the load on the body that is measurable, is it within hours it can be, or is it a longer gestation period, for want of a better term?
So this is the thing. So You have to work with the existing clinical pathways, you know, like trying to shoehorn technology into the NHS or wherever and expect them to bend around your technology just because it's available. You know, so you have companies who say, oh, if we use these, you know, IL-6 or 8 or 12 or whatever as a biomarker, we can pick them up so much earlier. There's something called diagnostic stewardship. So you wouldn't prick the finger of everybody who walks in through the front door of the hospital. It's going to cost you a fortune. It's invasive.
Yeah.
It's not cost effective. So, and very much now, certainly since 2016, there's a lot more in terms of NICE guidance and a standardized clinical practice. So the news to assessment system we've got here, which is a scoring system. So when you walk in and somebody thinks, right, it could be sepsis, a clinician will run through this basically painting by numbers tick sheet, you know,
Yeah.
heart rate, respiratory, all this sort of stuff. And if you score highly on that, then they'll say, right, we have enough evidence to spend the money on diagnostic tests, which
Yeah.
at the moment is lab-based tests and cultures, which take hours and some take days, and they're not even on site. So,
yeah.
And with sepsis, as we've spoken before, you know, every hour counts. And so by the time you're poorly enough to get to hospital, because sepsis starts really subtly, it's a bit like cold or flu, you start feeling a bit rough, and then it goes along for a little bit, and then it just exacerbates. It just,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, your immune system goes, right, done now, and it goes through the roof, and that's when it's, you know, really serious, and especially in children, which is something that we see time and time again, like Martha Mills, which is the whole Martha's law, which is now ingrained in the NHS. So if you think my kid probably has sepsis and the clinician says, I don't think she does, you're entitled to ask for a second opinion, and that's one of the.
So there is a question just pops up that a person here works in the NHS. Is the test for paediatrics too?
It will be, yes. So we're very early stage. So this is one of the things that's great about the innovation challenge, is that you can come at any stage, and you've had businesses, Sam, that you'll have reviewed that are way, you know, already commercialized or need kicking on to the next level or nearly commercialized. We're very much at the front end. So we came with, you know, we were pre-seed. We had a patent in place or an application in place and some basic costings, and we knew what we'd do. We'd managed to get advocacy from the UK Sepsis Trust. We've got a load of NHS people on board with us. Unfortunately, I can't tell you a lot more about where we are at the moment with some of it, but we are working with the NHS. We've got an in with them in terms of the innovation pathway now. So we will be looking to develop the test within the NHS for the NHS first, and then they will roll it out worldwide, and they will actually take a share of the profits to fund new innovation within the NHS, which is amazing. And that connection actually came off the innovation challenge from the actual evening. So there was a lady in the audience called Al Mills, who is part of IMED, the regulatory consultancy that are partners with TBAT. And she's done an amazing thing. Like, she's connected me with so many people, but one key one was this NHS innovation team. And I don't know what we wouldn't be where we are today without that. It's just an amazing thing.
I remember very clearly on the night. It's Kelly, your wife, isn't it? Yeah. And she went up. I had a little chat. She's a little bit nervous, and I introduced her. She did a talk, and when she went, she was so excited. And then we were actually sat in the bar later, and she had all the awards around her, and she's taking photos. Absolutely wonderful to have shared that with her. But kind of since then, so you've accessed some of the help that was on offer there. So I think, do you want to just chat a bit about what that's meant to you and who you work with?
A lot. I mean, the cash prize helped at the time because we just got an IP bill come through, so that really helped. But it was almost too much. The package was too much for us at the stage that we were at, so we weren't able to take advantage of a lot of it. And the good thing is that I didn't know this, but the actual package, if you don't use some of it, gets shared out among the rest of the group that were there on the evening. So that, I think that's fantastic as well. That even if you don't win, you still part of the network, and you still get a lot of support for free. The bits that we did take advantage of, and that we're in the process of taking advantage of, obviously, we're talking about grant applications, you and I, Sam. One really valuable one was working with Foresters, of the IP people. So they did a complete review of our IP and our situation, right, for free as part of the package, which was incredible. It was so comprehensive, and then they even identified some additional bits that we hadn't covered or hadn't thought about. So now we've got 2 patents, we've got 2 separate products, product lines, and all this, confidence going into investor meetings with timelines, and it's this and that, and just that confidence thing of which, if I'd have paid to do that, would have cost me tens of thousands of pounds. So
wow,
and
amazing.
Even recently, I had an investor meeting yesterday, and I'd had some last minute questions about stuff, and Kate Wilson, who's at Foresters, I emailed her on Sunday evening, and by Monday evening had everything sent to me. It was like War and Peace is what the detail it was, and I was just like, these people get it. They pull out all the stops, and but that's like we were saying. I've said it to you before. Is you waste a lot of time trying to find people in the right places, and yet you've got this whole network of people, and you always say to them, "Oh, have you thought about this? I can ring so and so, or I'll connect you with whatever." And I know that connection is actually genuine, and is going to lead somewhere. It's going to make the boat, row quicker. It's that kind of thing, which, as a first-time founder, and yet doing a lot of it on your own and everything else, it's invaluable. So that's kind of the bit that no one really talks about, I guess, of being part of this challenge.
Wow. Well, amazing. I feel, well, I've always been extremely proud of the Innovation Challenge, but hearing a story like yours and what it's meant to you is it's a lot of hard work, and it certainly is for Joe, who works alongside me on this. It makes it all worthwhile just hearing that story. So in the future, you're working with the NHS. You've got 2 products that you're looking to push out there now. So is it going to be a busy 12 months ahead of you?
Yeah, but I'm so excited. And, it's like I say, it's 20 years. So when the Innovation Challenge, the showcase, is it October?
October, you're going to be there?
Yeah, well, that will be 20 years, almost to the day that I walked. I say walked. It took me about an hour to get out of the hospital because I refused a wheelchair. Since I walked out of the hospital. So I might be in floods of tears on the evening, but it's quite a poignant thing to be stood there, presenting something 20 years after that. Is a big thing. So
yeah, amazing. Alistair, thank you so much for coming on this afternoon. We'll be talking over the next few weeks anyway. Can't wait I'm sure a lot of people can't wait to be able to hear your story in October at the finalist showcase. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
So it's my pleasure as always. But I just can't, just to anybody out there, I've sat in the workshops listening to this, and even though I did it last year, I'm still writing. I wrote loads of notes today based on it, because you kind of forget, or things change, and then you go, "Oh, actually, I must remember I need to do this now. I'm at this phase now." So, but like I said, the Innovation Challenge for me, the reason I went in for it, well, one, it was free. Obviously, it came with all the workshops and everything, but just having been through that and experienced what I've experienced with the follow-up and everything, just go for it. It's well worth it.
Okay, brilliant. Alistair, thank you very much. There you go, folks. All
right.
Enter the Innovation Challenge. Spread it amongst your networks. Let's make it a real success this year. Let's help some real businesses move forward. Thanks so much. And on that note, hello, Christian. I think, Joe, you were going to say some words about that. Actually, just to finish off in the next 5 minutes, I'll let Joe say this bit. Enough of me.
Sure. Can you see my screen? Yeah, no problems. I feel a bit emotional there, Sam, and like you said, we're both really proud of the Innovation Challenge, and I think that was a real great way to end all the workshops, and with Alistair being a real advocate of what the Innovation Challenge is all about, and proving what it can do for organisations. So like Sam said earlier on, the application window has opened today, and it closes on the 18th of August. So on our website, you'll actually find the application. So I'm just going to bring it up so you can quickly run it through you with it. If you go to the top of the screen, can you see that, Sam? Is that showing?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And if you click on the apply now, it's a really short application form, which takes about 15 minutes to complete. There isn't an option to actually start it and save it. So what we've done, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, at the very bottom, you can download a template there. So if you fill that in first, and then you can just cut and paste it to make sure that nothing's lost. There are about a dozen questions. There's the section here just about you as the applicant, and then the obvious ones on your company, when it was established, number of employees, and then we go into a little bit more detail. So there's 12 questions. We go into the business proposition project, where we gain a bit more information about your business. Please make sure that you complete all of these questions. It's really important that you complete them all and don't include any data sensitive, IP sensitive data. So there's 12 questions in all, and this will give our first phase of judges a real idea of what the project is about and where you want to take it. At the end of the questions, there's a button here for you to upload either a business plan or a slide deck. Please do add them in. We do need those, and we can't accept any other documents there. And then obviously the final sections here is just to confirm that you've not included anything that's IP sensitive. And the next stage, once we've chosen our top 10, the first phase judges will go through all of the applications, and they'll decide on the top 10 finalists. They'll be advised at the beginning of September that they've been shortlisted, and then the next stage is like Sam said and discussed with Alistair, that we have our showcase final in October. So we do need you there in person to pitch. This is a real opportunity for you to pitch to a room of investors, people on our partner referral scheme, people who have presented in the workshops and all for workshops, and our sponsors. So we do need somebody there in person, and we're not able to take pictures by virtual or by video. So we just ask you to confirm that. And then Sam mentioned earlier on about the CPHI Milan Prize that Christian's also supporting with the flights and accommodation. If you meet the criteria for the prize, we just need you to commit that you can send somebody for the duration of the event. So it's on the 8th, 9th and 10th of October, so it's the same time as our final showcase. The flights go out on the 7th and return on the evening of the 10th. So if you're chosen as a winner, we will let you know at the end of August, just so that we can confirm with CPHI. There's more information available on the website. There's the prize package, who the sponsors are, and if you just need any more information on the application process. Yeah. So like you said, Sam, we've got the final showcase. It's a real opportunity for you to put your project out there to a close-knit but quality set of people within the room. And we crown our winner on the evening. So we have a winner, overall winner, and 2 runners-up. And we also, like you said, Sam, we invite the audience to choose the audience winner. Alistair and Septes, they won the audience winner and the overall winner. So yeah, it's a real great opportunity for everybody to be involved, isn't it?
And what we're doing this year, everybody, is we are splitting it, life sciences, medtech on one side and other technologies and ideas in the other. And we're going to do a winner of each of those categories, and then an overall winner. It could be from either tranche. So don't feel that it's always medtech people who win. It is open to any technology, any industry sector. So, and we just welcome all the applications. This is a real opportunity for companies to shine and to get out there. As Alistair said, he met Al Mills there by chance. All of a sudden, she's opened the world to him for talking to the NHS and moving his project forward. So it is about it's not about the taking part, it's the winning that counts, apparently. But no, it's about taking part. It's being at the event and networking with such an incredible array of people who are going to be there on the night. So thank you very much, Joe. Everybody, even if this is the challenge isn't for you, please circulate it to companies you might know. Please put it around your networks. That is now open and it closes on the 18th of August. Really, thank you so much, everybody, for attending the workshop today. Thank you so much to the speakers, giving up your valuable time. Inspiring talks, every single one of them. Really do appreciate your input on that. Thank you to all our sponsors. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe, for organising it. Without it, it wouldn't have been possible.
Thank you, Sam. You've done really well to chair all 4 workshops. You've done so well.
There we go. Thank you. So thanks so much, everybody. Please get your applications in. We look forward to working with you all in the coming months. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.